Last time on Ral of the Sky Mountain People. After an exhausting evening of bearing the mighty Usara, Ral made his way back to his friend Danton's home, the Greystone Cottage. He reflected on childhood memories while enduring cold drizzling rain during his long trek back. The memory of the hooded drunk entering the cave as they were kids found him full circle now returning to Danton, but this time the cloaked figure seems far more sinister than a town drunk looking for a place to nod off. We return now to Lost Mine, Ral and Danton's home village, for what is next to come. January 5th, 2025, JAG Reads, Ral of the Sky Mountain People, Chapter 3.
Not those. Use the good cedar, behind the ash. It's gonna be cold tonight.
Gruffed a hobbled old man, layered in forest green, long-sleeved wool tunics. He is directing a younger lad from the village helping to gather wood for the fire in the square this evening. The wood was kept in a special shed just for such fires, and had not the slightest hint of being dampened by the day's sogging rainfall.
I fear the elves will have much to talk about tonight. Hurry up.
Morgan Rust had found himself a nice peace among the eldest, those who had held a sort of leadership role over the village that was named Lost Mine. Many shared stories over the name and came to the conclusions such as, it was called Lost Mine because the veins of ore that the village founders had desperately hoped for were never found. While others believed the area surrounding the village yielded plenty of resources and it was just the massive abundance of trees that buried the village in the mountainside in such a way no outsider would ever know it's there. If one, not graced with a keen geographical awareness, were to wander away, they would likely lose Lost Mine, seemingly forever, and never be able to return to it. Yes, the mountain terrain, the boulders, streams, and densely saturated forests were just that intense in the region. Despite the obscurity and somewhat protection this lush habitat has to offer, the eldest, like Morgan, always feel the obligation to protect the village and their council to the best of their ability. They do a great service to the village in their efforts by always relaying information with traders and visitors, as well as receiving updates from scouts and local hunters that serve the village's food needs. As of recently, the information the eldest were receiving was enough to place more gray hairs on Morgan's head, if it was at all possible, to be any more gray than it was already. He is thinking over the discouraging news as he strokes his white flowing beard that descends nearly to his abdomen, while he slowly begins packing back towards the fire pit at the center of Lost Mine. The Falcon would not be allowed to stay late tonight. Not that many usually ventured out after such a dreary wet day. Alternatively, the youngest ones always wanted to stick around to hear the eldest talk. But the conversations intended for tonight were certainly not that of the tall tales told for fun, and an intended shiver down the spine. Behind Morgan, the young lad had grunted over the load of cedar logs, and the eldest thought to himself, "At least the boy is working dutifully tonight, but even he cannot be allowed to stay." This was the case for all boys, old or younger, in times such as this, when there would be talks of danger to come near the village and possibly on the Sky City. The mountain people, all its factions, will likely be called upon before too long to offer their brightest and strongest men. Hadn't Lost Mine and its sister villages on the mountain cleft proper sent enough young men down into these foothills? Morgan thought. The eldest thought it was pointless. One, he has lived far too many years since learning the role of the people in this broken land, not just his village, but the entire country. He knows the young never think of it this way. All the youth ever see is the immediate beauty, and bless the sky for them. The young and innocent, the forest is a glowing glade of amber and green hues teeming with life, where everything is butterflies, birds, and blossoms. The sweet dewy air fills their lungs near and dear to their hearts, full of hope. Eldest Morgan Russ knows now that hope slowly loses its fight to time, the uncontested victor of all men, where village tradition slowly worms its way in, finding sustenance on lost dreams, encouraging men and women to fulfill their roles as providers to the community, and their way of living eventually traps them in a place like moss and root does to a cobblestone. To Morgan, that is remote mountain life in simplest terms. Around the fireplace, in the village square of Lost Mine, are many rows of perfectly cut logs, round and wide enough for visitors to take a seat and enjoy the warmth of a good fire and of a good conversation. The old man, one of the oldest in the village, rests his bones upon such a log closest to where the fire will be blazing. He doesn't seem to care that it is still soggy wet to the touch, and does not feel any dampness through his many layers of wool tunics. The young boy places the logs in a proper stack where the wood belongs near the fire pit. Under the loose supervision of Morgan, the boy works diligently at lighting the fire. With evening approaches, the light of the sun diminishes quickly. Absorbed by the gloomy overcast skies and the glow of the fire taking light casts warm dancing shadows outward like a spiderweb from the surrounding log seats. The young lad stands upright to observe his work, feeling the satisfaction of his task completed.
"Oh, by sky. That feels nice, doesn't it?"
says Morgan, stretching his hands outward towards the blaze of small twigs and straw. The fire dances on, seeking to move from its source to the larger logs, where it knows it will burn stronger and longer, feeding on the dense carbons of the cedar. The old man looks up, his eyes tracing the mirage-like tendrils of smoke as they reach for the clouded sky above. From his reverie of enchanting flames, he turns his palms upwards and lifts them, saying, "Into Father Sky this energy is returned.
We thank the great sky for the seeds and nourishment he has given, Blessed Mother, and her fruitful forest. From
Another voice matches Morgan's word for word. From blessings, our warmth. Morgan turns and smiles to see his fellow eldest, Yerwin Loggins, and greets him.
Yerwin, pleasant night to you.
Well, to you as well. Perhaps not the most pleasant of nights, one could complain, he replies, trailing off into a mutter towards the end of his response.
Your cedar is burning well,
Morgan continues to smile, despite his generally bleak outlook on life and the current political climate. He does have a way of finding happiness in the moment, to which in this case he felt compelled to pay one of his best friends a compliment, as the fire was burning so well and felt so nice and warm on his cheeks and hands. After all, those are Loggins' family cedar logs.
No, it's what I do. Only the finest of timber for our wonderful village,
boasts Yerwin, while taking a seat next to Morgan.
Oof, still damp, wet rather. Boy, go fetch some linen to wipe these seats up. The rest of the council will be here shortly. Surely the whole village can see the blaze you have started here.
The young lad, who was content with his work on the fire, now feels slightly embarrassed. And not just the heat of the fire, but blood now flushes his cheeks with color. He hurriedly heads to the supply shed on the edge of the square to follow Yerwin's command in search of something to help dry the stools surrounding the fireplace.
He'll be a good builder before we know it, Yerwin,
says Morgan rather defensively.
Maybe so, but you have to keep them in line. Life has gotten too easy for them. I fear we are on the precipice of it only getting harder, if I can say it's true. Perhaps. All the more reason I am tough on them all, snorts Yerwin.
His hands descend into his cloak, outer pockets, searching for what Morgan assumes is tobacco, likely in a birch-lined poke, to include a skinny, straight, cylindrical birch pipe to smoke it with. The eldest, now broiling warm in his many cloaks, in the glow of fire, stares fixedly into the flames, while out of the corner of his eye he confirms his guess is correct. Filching a finger pinch of tobacco out of the poke, Yerwin tamps it into his slim birch pipe. He uses a halven stick that was smoldering on the rim of the fireplace, which was used to light the fire, and is now the means to light the pipe. Tossing the stick back into the flames, he notices several villagers drawing near to the fire now, and he takes a long drag on the freshly lit pipe. A hot, bright, woodsy flavor rushes dry and hollow through his mouth. Shortly after, he exhales in calming satisfaction. It is short-lived, though, as he feels the sensation of Morgan wanting to discuss the evening's topics as much as he does. They had gone silent on the issue of life getting harder soon, when others began to arrive. For the next hour or so, they and others would tell their histories and stretch tales to the youngsters and folken who joined the fireside. Such is tradition. Yerwin began smoking his third or fourth pipe by the time most of the eld folk and children had kindly left the fire to catch a short night of rest before rising on the morning to resume the cyclical responsibilities of their lives. Nothing original or eventful had happened during the telling of the stories, and the night had remained as glum as the day had been. A few of the eldest remained, but none of the elden, as women were typically not a part of the conversation of the eldest, unless serving as an eyewitness or a direct representative of whatever issue may be at hand. Danton and Ral had arrived late to the telling of histories and tales and found some log seats near the back of the circle around the fire. Dan had been looking as pale as a fish's underbelly when they arrived, for Ral had told him all about his run-in with the Usara and the frightened cloaked figure. It took the remainder of the day for Ral to tell it all, and they nourished themselves on a venison vegetable stew Danton had graciously prepared by the hearth. The steaming, delicious meal was the final touch to push Ral into a much-needed and thankfully dreamless nap that caused their tardiness. It was a sort of sleep where all time seems to stand still in a darkness until one opens his eyes again to the hollow and mystic feeling that time may have actually leaped ahead while he was in the dark absence of consciousness. The most of the folken retired for the evening. Danton and Ral chose 2 logs closer to the fire and nearer to the circle of eldest. The eldest were sitting in the innermost circle around the fire, all side by side, in a number of 8. Danton and Ral inched up to their newly selected seats,
One of the eldest across the now dim fire spots them and says,
Danton, what is your purpose for bringing one of the Eld to the circle tonight? You know he should retire like the rest of the Falcon.
Eldest Brownleaf, all respects, we do have actually to share tonight, replies a shocked Danton. His eyes dart to that of Ral's, and they both share a glance, each gulping in anxious anticipation, like children just caught stealing. Well, stealing such as a sugary sweet plum from Eldon Freyshop's stand. Elder Danton may stay, Yerwin commands, raising a hand. For tonight is of serious discussion, and we not the time to discuss new trivial matters arising in the village of that of Eld Ral. Anxiety courses through Ral's bloodstream, fueled by rage. I'm practically an elder myself, for my eldertide is just several moons away. Gentle, my forest Falcon, Morgan says with soft and forceful words, cutting the tension with ease. He has a way of calling attention to himself and bending the will of others into a sort of kind obedience. Morgan continues,
Elder Danton, yes, you may stay, and you call to claim that Ral here has a topic worthy of discussion tonight?
Danton notices the subtle yet wise way the eldest, Rust, directs his questioning away from Ral, enabling Danton as elder to opportunity to speak in Ral's defense. With his eyes locked on Morgan, as though he was wearing horse blinders, he answered, hoping he sounds firm rather than weakened utterance. Yes, eldest, thank you. That which Ral has spoken to me this eve, I think it is of importance in relating to what I'm guessing will be discussed, here? Guessing? Challenges eldest Loggins. Again, Morgan softly raises up a hand now towards Yerwin in an effort to lessen the near contempt of such a probing question. Yerwin notices and rephrases slightly, but this time not in a question. You presume that of which we will speak of tonight will relate to the subjects of eldest on council?
I will allow it,
interjects eldest Brownleaf.
Any objectors?
Yerwin Loggins is first to speak again. I will listen then, but we will hear it from Elder Danton. Ral need be here. Among the small group of several sighs are uttered. Ral and Danton both look into the fire, downcast, lost in what to think of the stubbornness of Yerwin and ironically frozen in the realization that they were still in need of maturation and wisdom to handle the tension of such situations. Still just pups, learning to venture from their dens, really. Tradition be damned, thinks Ral. Yerwin and this whole village, I could leave it all behind. I hate these politics.
Now, this song from the bird, is it best heard in the forest or in a story by the fire told by a man who heard it?
Questions Morgan in a poetic parable-like fashion. Again, he drew the immediate attention of all in accompaniment.
We have spent too much time on this subject, and I think we will hear this best from the young lad, soon to be a man.
Eldest Coltath, most when speaking with him skip the formality and just call him Coltath, stands up in agreement, nodding his head. His movement looks most peculiar, as in doing so, the cloak of his hood, which he usually wears over the top of his head, shifts and reveals his mostly bald scalp. Sprouting above a head, shiny in the dancing firelight, are several squiggly clumps of white hair going out in almost straight, wavy lines. He confirms his agreement with a bit of a titter at the end when he says, I, too, would like to hear of the dark things happening in our lovely woods directly from this young man. Ral's eyes dart from the fire to observe Coltath as he lowers himself back to his log. Their eyes lock as Coltath is fixing his hood back over his crazy hair in the process. He winks, almost as an afterthought, back at Ral. It all sends shivers down Ral's spine. It's not possible. I have only been with Danton. What does Coltath know? And how? His thought drifts away as he returns his eyes to the fire to hear the council begin to stir. A few of the eldest mutter in their agreements, more likely satisfied to be moving forward than debating such a thing. Eventually, even Yerwin gives way. Very well. I suggest we hear it first and quickly then, Eld Ral. Ral clears his throat and tries his best to provide a summarized version of what happened over the last 2 days. He tells of how he looked up from the reflective stream water to the visitor, the Usara. He explains how he was powerless to its pull, and that the Usara commanded him to share its dying vision. At this point in the telling, Ral proceeded with caution and uncertainty, doubting if any, or even a few, would believe of any of his story. Continuing, he tries to describe the strange feeling of coming into the vision and where the Usaras takes him. When it comes to the details of the cloaked figure, Ral feels like vomiting in the greasy feeling that overwhelms him. He is aware that despite his best wishes, he will never forget the grotesque evil he witnessed in that vision. Deep inside, Ral knows it was a real moment. He was truly there. The Dark One truly saw him. Concluding his story, Ral explains that he worked exhaustively into the night and morning to provide a proper burial for the Usara. Following that, he had made his way through the drizzle and downpour until he reached the Greystone cottage and told Danton everything. Finishing, Ral says, "And with Danton's urging, we made our way here to tell you, the eldest, and that's what happened." Ral shifts his head down, almost embarrassed by the tale now that it was out. Further to his dismay, eldest Yerwin Loggins was the first to reply, while others sat meditatively, digesting everything they had just heard. It was a relief that no one interrupted him during his telling, but what came from Yerwin hit like a pure insult.
"I think you have been listening to too many stories by the fire, young lad. You are still just a boy, and you are wasting our time,"
said Yerwin. Then, as if to kick dirt into the wound he had just opened on Ral, he adds,
"I will be speaking to your father about this."
Yerwin turns his gaze back to the fire with a smug look of satisfaction, yet many of the other eldists on the council seem to not even notice his comments. Many, still considering what was said, blankly stare into the fire, but for another moment until eldest Brownleaf, ever the more sensible of the eldest, inquires to Ral,
"Did you ascertain which direction the figure cloaked in black went?"
"No, there was no direction in that place," Ral says, horrified by the cold darkness in his own words.
"Did the Usara speak anything else to you, Eld Ral?"
questions Morgan thoughtfully, softly. "Yes, something about darker forces and using this knowledge wisely."
"You did well in bringing this to us, then,"
confirms Morgan, nodding to Ral's response. Another eldest follows up with the opinion and states,
"Real or not, nay, I say, rather it was a vision of precisely what is on the doorstep of the Sky Mountain people. Pure symbolism. The Usara has always been a protector of this realm, doing as much good and bad as Mother's natural chaos allows it. The Dark One is the King's forces on our doorstep, tainting our woods, obviously."
He sits back, content with his interpretation of Ral's story, equally smug in self-satisfaction as Urin was a moment before.
"It's true. Darkness is upon our force at the hand of the King. Mayhap, like the stories of the old that we tell here tonight, many will come ancient truths of the past, beasts and dark ones alike,"
adds another eldest member, pulling at the curls in his mustache.
"Perhaps this boy tells cheer, and one day a new story we will have for the young."
Eldest Loggins begins to feel agitated by all the different points of view, and no one agreeing with him specifically. He reaches into his cloak pocket for his poke so that he may smoke in an effort to remain calm, a challenge for an old man such as him, especially a Loggins. While doing this, he hears some of the other eldest mumble in agreement, or was it in thought, or perhaps it was indifference to response of the eldest with the curly mustache. Koltat, the most obscure of the whole group, breaks the pensive moment, but what he says further unhinges all in attendance, and the cold of the night seems to dig a little deeper into everyone's bones.
"The Dark One moves past Moss to back, towards encampment,"
he says, monotone, eyes drifting dreamily into the wobbling flames before him.
"What did you just say?"
blurts Yerwin, fumbling with a nearly dropping his sandstone-colored pipe. He speaks of Dark One in the cloak moving north, past us, moss to his back, remarks Morgan, like that of a teacher in his class.
But how? How have you come by this, eldest Koltath?
Asks eldest Brown.
I've been dreaming again,
Replies Koltath, still in a daze, orange whips flicking in the reflection of his eyes.
I think Koltath has also lost sight of what's dream and fabled fireside story.
Chuckles Yerwin, awkwardly realizing his mark is not well received.
It's eldest Koltath,
Danton tries to say, but his words come out strained and quiet. Yerwin turns to Danton, puffing upright.
Mind your... The Elder Greystone is correct,
Interrupts Morgan sharply.
This is hardly a moment for crude laughter. We still have decorum and tradition to respect, and I would like to know what eldest Koltath has to say on this dreaming of his. The what?
Jerks Koltath from his dreamy disposition before the flames and continues.
Oh, my dreams. Yes, quite wicked as late. Till last night, that is. As the Dark One has moved past us, I am positive. He found shadow. Refuge. Yes, refuge in the shadows, that is, of Mogram. The dying forest?
Blurted a questioning eldest across the fire from Koltath.
The dead forest,
Replies Koltath with a touch of sorry for your loss in his tone of voice.
I suspected he had encamped there, to lure in that which he feasts. Blood it is. He drinks it, I should say. Rather a nasty way of sustaining, sucking the entirety of the life force from its prey.
You speak of evil lunacy, protests Yerwin. Morgan gently raises a hand again, but no one seems to notice as all attention is on Koltath, the great storyteller of his time.
Indeed, I do. This one is of pure evil,
responds Koltath, lifting the outside corners of his eyebrows and nearly snarling his nose to accentuate his statement.
I also suspect that he came nearly from directly under us, straight west and southwest to Mogram Deep, deep below, and from the east where there is said to be nothing.
Koltath, now enjoying entertaining even the eldest of men in his village, adds a twist of mystery and disbelief to his utterance of the word nothing. He even holds up his hands and pointer fingers in a shaken, mocking gesture. Eldest Brownleaf dutifully interjects.
But no man has ever survived the deep caverns beneath these mountains.
Oh, correct. No human has ever survived,
Koltath replies, emphasizing the hue sound in human. Dazing into the dancing flames, the images of his dreams passing through his mind's eye, he continues.
It was Rao's story that confirmed this Dark One was indeed in Mogram. His dark influence is tainting and killing the good of our forests. The death of our great protector, the Usara, should be all in the convincing and warning you eldest shall need. Yet we are all like the grey stones on the cliffs of Gaelwyn, grounded to this earth and stubborn to the changes of the wind and rain. Time is changing. Great forces are at hand. Good, evil, and that which we cannot comprehend yet. That which is unseen.
Yes, yes, and the sky people actually came from the sky flyers, gruffs Yerwin.
Enough, Yerwin,
scolds eldest Mogren Rust with authoritative finality.
You prove my point. Your temperament has you guilty,
chides Koltath. Now, Morgan speaks up again, looking to tie it all together.
So you can tell from your dreams and the sensation of this once near presence of evil that has indeed moved on towards the king's men? Yes, answers Koltath. And that brings us in full circle to speak of our main point of discussion tonight.
Morgan looks in the direction of Danton and gently commands,
Young elder,
We are greatly appreciative that you have brought Ral here tonight to provide his eyewitness account on such an important matter. May the sky be with you, and him as you take your leave for tonight.
Like in his youth, and like the men still around the fire, Ral was captivated listening to Koltath. But the sudden dismissal returns him back to his state of emotions just prior. His anger, always getting the best of him, flashes through his entire body again. He doesn't want to be called a boy one more time. He doesn't want to be treated like one, and he doesn't want to retire to his parents' cottage as this is his matter. He was there, in the Magram, a place he was only warned about in his youth, a decaying place to never go to, where wicked things may reside, a place he would never have recognized even in the vision provided by the Usara. Koltath's telling confirms it all. And did it not make Ral a key part of what would be decided tonight? And that's it, Ral shouts incredulously, standing up from his log and the gentle tug of Danton already on foot. I am the only one who has seen it. Doesn't that mean something?
Easy, Ral,
Danton murmurs. As if reading his own questioning thoughts, Eldest Morgan Russ speaks before any of the other eldest do, before Yerwin or another escalates this situation more.
I am genuinely thankful for this information, but our discussion for tonight has lost mind in the possible pathway for disaster, and such decisions shall not be made but among the eldest. Such is our doctrine.
Danton speaks in a gentle,
Ral, come on,
while pulling at his elbow. Ral, boiling with rage at the seeming unfairness, but still holding on to his respects for Morgan, has no choice but to turn the rest of the eldest and say while scanning them all but Morgan, Forget your stupid rules. Screw your decorum. Then looking last at Yerwin, and sky be damned this stupid village. I'm out of here.
My apologies. Thank you, Eldest Rust, for the audience tonight,
says Danton foolishly, bowing his head hurriedly while turning to catch up to Ral, who is already nearly out of the fire's light. This has been the reading of Chapter 3 of Ral of the Sky Mountain People by James A. Greig.